Hey YouTube, it's Gareth Beavers here from Tech Radar talking about another phone. This time it's the Galaxy S7 Edge. Now, Samsung had a big challenge this year. The S6 Edge was a really powerful phone. It did really well, it won awards, it looked great. It was a complete reimagining of the idea of what we had for smartphones. So what do you do again? Well, Samsung took it one step further. It made a bigger phone that feels more compact. It improved the camera, it made the battery so much better, but it made it a lot more expensive. So let's find out if this is really worth the extra cost or if it's just a design upgrade that you can just pass by. Okay, let's talk design. Now, Samsung's really upgraded the way the S7 Edge looks, and the way it's done that is with a process called 3D thermoforming. What that means is that the edges of the display curve nicely into the sides of the phone. You see this metal rim all around the edges. It curves nicely on the back and on the front, so it sits really well in the hand. Now, the problem there is it doesn't actually feel as premium as last year because if you're holding it, you're not feeling as much of this metal, and that's the bit that makes it feel expensive. But on the other hand, it does curve very nicely, it does sit very well in the palm, and to me, that's a really good thing. Given the 5.5-inch screen on offer here, you could say this is a phablet, but given how compact Samsung has made the phone, it doesn't actually feel like it's a rival to the iPhone 6s Plus, for instance. It's quite easy to move your finger all the way across the screen, and while, yeah, possibly you might need to shuffle it around a little bit, given the size of the screen, I'm really impressed with just how compact it all feels. Now, looking at this phone, you think, yeah, it's a premium, well-made phone. You know, you've got exposed ports at the bottom here, everything fits really nicely around. So you'll probably be surprised to find out this thing's actually waterproof. You can put it in 1.5 meters of water for up to 30 minutes, although I wouldn't do that too often because it's a phone after all. But given the fact Samsung's left these ports exposed at the bottom, I'm really impressed with that as a feature, and it gives an element of sort of life-proofing, of safety, and makes you feel like you can drop this phone in the bath and you can still use it afterwards, which is a really great safety feature. The other key feature that Samsung's brought in is something in the SIM tray. Well, of course, you can slide out the SIM to change it over, but below that is a micro SD slot, and that means you can expand the memory on this phone. Last year we had the S6 Edge, which could do 32 gigs, 64 or 128, and that was enough for most people, but it got expensive at the top end. Now you've just got a 32 gig option, but you can add another 2 terabytes in there on top. Now, the difference there is that you can't install apps to it, so if you're doing Spotify, real racing, games and apps like that, you're going to have to worry about the space they take up. But with something like Spotify, you can install the music you download to the card. Real racing, the extra game files, they can go to the card too. So the internal storage doesn't get eaten up too much, and you get the best of both worlds. Okay, moving on to the screen now. As you can see, it's a 5.5-inch display going from one corner to the other, and it's really clear and it's really bright. And you might think it's the same as last year. Of course, it is QHD resolution, which is the same sharpness as last year, but it still looks really good. It's still built on Samsung's Super AMOLED technology, which means the colours look really good, the whites are white, the blacks are black, and everything's really crisp and sharp. Samsung has boosted the brightness this year, so it means that when you're out and about in bright light, you can see a lot more of the screen. That's really important if you're going to be playing with your phone loads in the summer. One of the weird things about the Galaxy S7 Edge is it doesn't actually turn off. You've got this always-on display, which is a display that stays always on, but it gives it a very strange feeling because you look at the phone on the desk and you think, hang on, the screen hasn't turned off. But what it's doing there is just giving you things like the time, notifications, the date, your battery life. And those are the things that we actually wonder about quite a lot. So we reach for the phone, turn it on, and in doing so, we wake the whole thing up, and that eats a lot of battery life. So by doing it this way means all that information is there right in front of you. And while yes, it does take battery because it's about 0.8% per hour, it actually saves battery because we're not constantly waking the phone up, having a look at it, and doing things we don't need to do. Last year when Samsung brought out the Galaxy S6 Edge, it looked great as a curved display, but it didn't do a lot. This year, things are a lot different. We've now got the Edge display, which has more features inside it, and it's something I'm actually using day to day. One of my favourites on this is the shortcuts. So whenever you're using the phone, a quick swipe to the left and you get the apps that you really want. You can move these around, change the order, do them exactly as you want, so they're always there under the finger when you want them. On top of that, you've got things like a compass, access to the torch straight away, a ruler, which is really cool because you want to show your friends how good you are at measuring. And this time Samsung's added in My Places, which will change geographically. So when you're at home, you'll have a certain amount of apps. When you're at work, you might have different worky productivity apps. But when you're out and about, things like Google Maps, music, it will change dynamically so it knows that where you are, what kind of apps you want to use. Samsung's Touchwiz Overlay is something that's divided opinion over the years. A lot of people feel like it's too on top, it's too brash, it's too cartoony. But since the S6, Samsung's really dialed it down, and again, things have got a lot sleeker with the S7 Edge. The notifications bar is now white, a lot cleaner. All of the apps and icons themselves are much flatter and a lot more in Google's material design. So while it's not stock Android, which some people really like, it's a good mix between the two. So you've got extra functionality like Quick Connect right here, but it looks really easy. Everything's really slick under the finger, and given it's got either an Exynos processor or a Qualcomm Snapdragon 820 combined with 4 GB of RAM, it's very quick and very fluid under the finger. And it's what you expect for a phone of this money. And I really like what Samsung's done visually. It looks really flat, it looks really clean, but it does have that little touch of extra functionality that I think a lot of people will like. One of the key features that Samsung's talking a lot about this year is the game launcher. In reality, it's just a folder for your games. You place them in this different area and you've got different options to move with them. So Game Tools is something that really adds an element of functionality on top of what you're doing when you're gaming. So first of all, you can set it so you've got no alerts during the game. So if you're playing a racing game and you get a message, it will stay in the background and won't get in the way of your actual driving experience. On top of that, you've got this little icon at the corner here, which is your games toolbar. You can decide whether you've got the alerts. You can lock the back and home keys, which means that you don't accidentally press those, minimize it to pause the game, take a screenshot, and you can even record yourself playing. So if you want to upload it to YouTube as a tutorial or just to brag to your mates, that's there and that's an option. We tried that, it doesn't work as well, it gets really choppy, the frame rate goes down quite a lot, but it's there if you like to do it. On top of that, you can even change how the game works. So if you're playing a game that doesn't need as much graphical intensity, so Candy Crush, you can set it so it has a lower frame rate, which means it doesn't take as much power from the phone, your battery is saved, and you're still getting the same experience. Now, one weird feature of this is it does slow down the game a little bit. So if you're doing a tap game that needs you to be really reactive, this can be a problem. So make sure when you're playing the game, it works just for you. One of the issues Samsung really needed to nail this year was the battery life of the S7 Edge. The S6 and S6 Edge last year were good phones in theory, but the battery life just wasn't up to scratch. Sure, they beat our test very well, but in day-to-day use, they just kept losing power for no reason at all. Now this year, Samsung's given it a much bigger battery, so it's 3600 milliamp hours, and on top of that, it's combined it with Google's doze mode, which means when the phone goes to sleep, it's properly asleep and doesn't keep pinging looking for network alterations, any notifications, and it means a lot longer on the battery. On top of that, you've got fast charging, which is really useful because it means in about 30-35 minutes with the phone turned off, you can get 50% of juice, which means if you're doing a test, say you're trying to do a video review of a phone and it runs out of battery, you can juice it right back up again. On top of that, you've got wireless charging. Now, there are various ways you can wirelessly charge phones out there, but the Samsung phone can do them all. So whatever you put it on, if it can wirelessly charge, the Samsung will draw power right out of that and it'll work straight away. The charging port on the back is actually quite small. It's not as wide as you'd want it to be, so it might not be compatible with everything, but generally you plop it down on the desk and it will start charging, and it does it rather quickly. Overall, Samsung has really improved on the battery performance, and that's what we wanted to see. You'll get at least a day out of it, probably about 20% by the end of the day before you reach for the charger, and to us, that's good enough. Let's talk about a really key feature of any smartphone, the camera. Now, Samsung's done something weird here by dropping it from 16 megapixels down to 12 megapixels, but in doing so, it's made it actually amazing. It means you can get low light pictures much better. It's sharper, it's much faster to take those pictures, and they save to the SD card much quicker. All really good when you're trying to capture that snap instantly, and Samsung's done some really good things here. One of the features I love is the double tap to open the camera. It opens really quickly, and as you can see, the interface is a lot slicker. It's basically just the things you need: resolution, flash, turning HDR on and off, and choosing effects. I don't want to say it's gone down the Apple route, but it's a lot simpler than it was before, and all the key features are right there. And taking pictures really quick, really works really well. But on top of that, if you want to get a little bit more fancy, you've got Pro mode. So you can open this up, change things like the color balance, or the focus mode, which is really useful because if you want to get exactly the picture you want, it's right there for you. Aperture, basically everything's there to get the photo that you want, and you can save some of these settings to make it so that every time you open the camera, it gives you the settings you really want. So let's talk through some of the pictures that I captured, and there's a lot of really good improvements that I really like to see from the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge. First one is snow. Now, this is quite a niche situation, but cameras in the past, you think, oh, it's snowing, let's take a really good picture. You can't actually get the snow, but here it's captured really well. Now, this is low light. This took me 3 or 4 goes to get because it was a little bit blurry a couple of times, but once it focused properly, it was a really great picture. One of Samsung's big claims for the S7 Edge's camera this year is that it can focus really quickly and get really sharp photos instantly. And while it's not quite as good as Samsung says, you can get some really clear, really in-motion shots. As you can see here, you've got a really, really fun bird having a great time swimming around across the screen. And you don't get these kind of shots with a lot of phones. And again, it just shows that Samsung is really good at keeping the motion blur down to a minimum. Right, so that's the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge in a nutshell. And in short, it's the upgrade that we wanted. It's got a great camera, really. It's the best on the market right now. The battery is an upgrade that we really needed. The design is something that's going to sell the phone to you. It feels really great in the hand. And while some people might not feel this is premium, to me, it's a really good upgrade. Now, the thing is, this thing is very expensive, so you have to be ready to pay for the privilege. But in short, this is the phone that we wanted Samsung to make, and it's going to be the phone of the year in my opinion. So thanks very much for liking, thank you very much for subscribing, and if you want to see anything more from TechRadar, please let us know in the comments below because we do read them, and we'll see you again soon.